Section 230 gives publishers like the platforms almost is, sort of very broad immunity from liability for republishing things that are defamatory or harmful in some way. When Section 230 was enacted, the internet was in its infancy, and a defamation action against the company that was simply republishing somebody else's statements could have been fatal.
The problem with these kinds of lawsuits is not the success of these claims, but the incentives they create for these bulletin board systems. Any system that allows other people to speak will have lots of, things that are false, defamatory, etc. And my worry always is that if the incentive is liability if I leave something up and no liability if I take it down, the natural incentive is to take it down. The economic incentive, the business model means that you take it down. There's not an economic incentive to leave it up because the liability exposure is too grave.
So Congress stepped in order to enable the internet to grow and to become an instrument of commerce, which it has done.
Both sides have really used 230 as a proxy for their anger at big tech, and I think that's right. I think parties are trying to solve for different things. Conservatives think that there's too much moderation and censorship and that it disadvantages them. Democrats say there's still too much harmful content up.
Section 230, which was enacted to enable the internet and these kinds of providers, platforms to grow, has I think turned out to be in some ways a gatekeeper that allows the kind of disinformation campaigns that have pushed the society to poles apart.
So a repeal of Section 230 would be dramatic. And what would the effect of that be?
My worry about reforms to 230 are it'll actually corrode our information environment in a way that basically either leads to everything goes. We've moved to a signal kind of system where there is no content moderation, et cetera, or it leads to a totally kind of Disneyfied universe where nothing bad is ever said because something bad is said may trigger a liability regime.
Likely to mean platforms will significantly restrict what speech they permit. And in my estimation, that won't eliminate the speech we don't like. Again, it will just push it elsewhere. So doing nothing also seems a little bit unlikely, given that there's people on both sides of the aisle who are pushing for change right now. I think we, again, first need to consider what the goals are and whether they're the right ones. If the goals of the legislation are greater accountability, consistency of moderation decisions, decreasing unlawful content, like those seem like laudable goals. The question just is then with some of this legislation that we need to think about, is it actually implementable?
I can't imagine Section 230 being repealed outright. It would essentially entrench permanently the big platforms because no one would be able to sort of get through the startup phase without facing the kinds of litigation threats that Anupam was talking about. So I think the question that Congress is really going to confront is, how do we discourage the platforms like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter from building business models that encourage disinformation campaigns? Because that's where the money is at the moment. Stay tuned, but the fate of Section 230 very much hangs in the balance of what Congress is willing to do. Although Biden had promised as a pillar of his platform to repeal Section 230, I think he's going to change his mind about that.